Yeah. Hey, bounce back community. This is Pastor Johnny. Well, Coach Johnny. Got a lot of names. Pastor, Coach, Daddy, Leader, whatever. Amen. But this is Heraclio and Johnny and me and my identity crisis with the names. Um, so people call me Junior, whatever. But we're here. We're here in another
Like that one.
episode. Yeah,
He's a junior, whatever.
Junior. Yeah. And what's your name, young lady?
I'm Mrs. Wyatt. Glad to see you,
Yeah.
family. It's been a while. It's a week is always too long, but I'm glad to see you all. Glad to be in community with you, and I'm excited about today's topic.
Yeah, you're on another episode of the Bounce Back Podcast. This episode, we're going to talk about something that kind of hit me. We're gonna talk today about being in the anchoring stage. Let me see. I think I got the title here for you somewhere. You know, me trying to be the producer and everything. We're gonna talk about anchor energy, right? Anchor. We're gonna go over all the different stages, but anchor energy and what that means. Right. Becoming the steady in a shifting world. Becoming the steady. Becoming what's steady. And I think that's an important conversation for folks in our kind of life stage, Gen X, in our 40s, late 40s and 50s, and some Gen X in their 60s now.
Right.
So that's a very important topic. It came to me because this weekend has been the last 2 weeks have been very busy in terms of ministry and leadership and everything like that. And so me and you were talking about that just this weekend as I came back from my trip. So amen. So today's episode asks the question for each and every one of us: what's anchoring you today? What's anchoring you today? What's anchoring me? And how does it help us to be anchors? Amen. As we help other folk, right? So as you know, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, we were in revival, and the poignant thing about that is our guest speaker, Pastor Nick, his father preached for us over 30 years ago. And so now he comes and he's the preacher, he's the pastor and the preacher.
Right.
And so and he was probably a little older than his dad was actually when his dad preached. I think his dad was in his 40s. So like you look 30 years later, 30 years, we were teenagers, we were approaching our 20s, we were just like in a different stage of life.
Yes.
And now here we are in that stage where our parents were and trying to figure out what that means. And then this past weekend I was away in Richmond, Virginia. I was there for the International Youth Conference for our church. And being in that space, I remember 12 years. I think it was 2012. Was it 2012 when I preached a youth conference, or was it earlier? I think 2012 I did a youth conference. It was the year before I became pastor, right?
Yes.
So yeah, 2012. And man, in 2012, I'm in my 30s. I'm what we call the hot preacher.
Hot young thing.
Hot young, you know what I'm saying? That's what I said yesterday, right?
Mine too.
Thank you. Yeah, I was the hot preacher. You come, people are excited to hear that you're coming to preach. But it's a different space you're in that moment as a young preacher, trying to prove yourself, trying to electrify people, trying to build your reputation, right? So it's not that when I preach now, I don't give a hot sermon, but I'm not trying to build a reputation, as opposed to living in the reputation I've already built. So that was this weekend, kind of being in youth conference in a different role. I wasn't in the role of the hot preacher. I was in the role of the facilitator, right?
The elder statesman.
I wouldn't say that yet.
Okay.
I'm not the elder statesman. That's more like Brother Ron.
Right.
It's like Brother Ron,
right.
Brother Dwayne. They're the elder statesmen at conference. No, I'm not there yet. Brother Ron is the elder statesman, right? Because like he got he's youth. You think of youth conference, you think it's the Tisdale, you think of Brother Huggins, you think of, but in that middle stage when we were growing up in the 90s, it was Brother Ron.
He was the hot.
He was the hot. Yeah, he was the hot preacher.
In the 80s, yeah.
In the 80s.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Yeah, right. And so now 80s, early 90s, right? And so
Yeah.
now we're in a different space. Let me see
Mm-hmm.
somebody commenting. Hey, Sister Gail. Yeah, I'm good to see Gail on the line. A little bit about that hot young thing
Sis.
we talked about. Yeah.
And
Uh,
she's still a hot young thing.
yeah, we was at church with First Lady yesterday, and so that's what this episode kind of comes out of, right? So yeah, so Thursday and Friday I'm at the youth conference with these young ministers, and I don't feel like I should be on the stage because this youth leads on stage, but Brother Ron is sending me up on the stage because I'm still the pastor in my middle ages, so I kind of I'm the bridge between him and these young preachers. And so
Right.
I'm not up there to be the one moving the crowd or to command the stage. I'm there to guide the young ministers, and it was just a different vibe for me. Um, Not that I haven't done that before, but it's for me become so pronounced. And then this weekend, we have these two young leaders
Yes.
at Pastor Mullins Church, at Crystal Church, that we ordained and dedicated to ministry in different roles, in the diaconate role and then in the ministry track. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just a blessing, but it also it just brought the point home. The last 2 weeks have really brought the point home that
Yes.
we're in a different stage.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
not we're in a different stage, and what that means. And so me and you me and you were talking about that. Amen.
I
We were
can't
talking
see it.
about,
See it. I wish I could see what they're saying.
yeah, just it's you can see it in the comments. Just hit the
Okay.
comment button. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see it if you
Oh,
click
I see it. I
comments.
see it.
Yeah,
I see
yeah. You can see exactly what she's saying. But she laughing at us. So it had me thinking about that, and so we created some categories that we want to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was filled with passion and promise, but I wasn't the hot thing. There's these other guys coming up, and at least we hope for that. But it means that I
Right.
have to make room for them, and for that,
Right.
right? I have to find my new space and understand what that means.
Right.
And so I thought it would be good for us to talk about that, because I know that's not the only thing that happens for us, not just in ministry, but me
Right.
and you started to talk about it in terms of marriage, what that looks like
Yes.
really for our kids and those
Mm-hmm.
around us, and for other couples looking at us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something we've been living through, but something I want to just name today for those who are viewing.
Right.
Becoming the steady and the shifting world. Yeah, you want to share anything about that as we
Well,
talked?
well, when you did talk about it, yeah, when you talked about the anchor generation, I do remember that terminology in one of my psych classes. It was like human development, and I remember I was fascinated by it and going into the deep dive. And of course, I don't remember, and so I was asking you to elaborate. And like as you were saying it, it was really resonating to me, and it resonated to me more so because of the stage that we're in now.
Right.
Because I remember there were 5 stages. There were different stages of building, and it just made me be. It just made me. It's like you feel. I have this feeling that I'm in a stage, but I didn't have a language or the name to put it. I've heard the sandwich generation where you're holding everything together, and so. But as I really reflected on it and read more into it, I was like, this is it. It just
Yeah.
really resonated to me, like the anger generation. And it made me, as I was thinking, I realized that the anger generation, but often it also carries emotional, spiritual, and relational weight across all generations.
Right.
you
Right.
know Many of us, we're in this role now, and so the question is, do I continue to be in the forefront, or do I step back, and what does that look like?
Right.
So just like you were talking about youth conference, we we're celebrating anniversary with our family, and it was just wonderful to see. I've always been the worship leader, the choir director, but it was wonderful. I was a part of the choir. I enjoyed asking when is rehearsal,
Right.
which rehearsals I can come to. I enjoyed taking direction from my choir director. It felt good to say she's my choir director. It felt good to be proud of, as she held the room. I was like that proud choir member, and it felt good. I didn't feel like, oh, I needed to be in the front. I didn't feel I needed to give her instruction. It was just great, and it really really fed my soul.
Mhm.
It was very nourishing to me. And it was also, I also was proud to see that, these babies that, we had together, that they're following in our footsteps, and they're able to, with their trust, we can trust them with what we seeded in them. So it was, yeah.
Mhm.
So as we were talking about it, it was just really, really resonating with me. So that's why I'm so excited about the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like you feel that way? Why do you feel like you, because we're in it now, we're going to introduce the different stages that we created,
Right.
but why do you feel like you feel that way? Why do you feel like you were able to sing and not feel a need to be in the forefront anymore? You were settled and satisfied taking instructions
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to needing to lead the thing. Why you felt like that was the case?
I think because I had that season. So I was given
Mm.
the opportunity to be a choir director from the time I was 19 in different stages, in my dad's church, and now in under you as my pastor. So I've done
Oh,
that.
mhm.
I did it in high school. And so I've had the responsibility. And so now, with that comes time and experience. As you get older, you tend to look to see what, who's behind you. And so I just embrace the fact that I'm able to make room and to mentor and to support those that are behind me. So yeah, I think when you've had that building season, I think, and I think, yeah, some people, not all people, are okay with stepping back and getting
Yeah.
instruction.
Well, I think that's important. I think that if you were able to have your own season in which you were able to claim the stage, it you you were able to satisfy that that drive, right, or that fuel, so that
That need,
when that
yeah.
season is over, you can say, okay, I had my opportunity, and
Right.
and that there's a space for me,
Right. In
right?
this new
If
season. Yeah.
there's a different space for you.
Right.
So if you don't have that space, then it's hard to move on. But now you can, you've had the space, and so now you can move. So let me introduce. Let's quickly break down the journey,
Okay.
right? So I got some slides ready for us, right? So like we asked the question, there's these 5 stages. What stage do you feel like you're in? Are you in the building stage, the striving stage, the stage of clarifying and anchoring, and or eldering and witnessing, right? So there's these stages, and the
Right.
stages aren't linear. So we talked about, one of the things, because one of the things I struggle with actually is in terms of ministry. I do feel like I'm in my right stage, right? I'm moving into the anchoring, kind of clarifying stage. But there
Yes.
are some stages in our lives where I feel like we're not there yet in the anchoring, like me and you, right? We're looking for home, we're looking for a house, right? And
Right.
yeah, we that's more like the striving
Striving.
stage, right?
Yes. Yes.
But so there could be sometimes in your life where you're at a particular age where you feel like you shouldn't be in this stage,
Right.
and we got to figure out what to do about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just quickly kind of go over that, right? So you have that. So building is like laying the foundation. Like I try to get cute, right? Learning systems, the craft, culture, taking risks, trying, failing. It reminds me of my time, excuse me, in the Bronx, right?
Mm-hmm.
Forming identity through doing,
Right.
fueled by hunger and hope. I remember that early stage when we were both in our 20s, and right, there's so much I wanted to do. I wanted
Yes.
to make a name by myself. So what was fueling me is the hunger to do something powerful, the
Right.
hope that one day me and you will be TD Jakes and CC, you know, that was the hope, right? And then the next stage was the striving stage.
Right.
So we get there, you get married. Not only are you trying to build, but you're seeking recognition and
Yes.
affirmation. You
Yes.
want to be acknowledged by people. You're working to prove your worth.
Yes.
You're working to hone your skill and
Mm-hmm.
your value. So I remember that. I remember coming there and coming to the Bronx and being the guy that took over the choir. But then once I
Right.
took over the choir and time came, we got married, started having a family. Now it's time to build a reputation as a good preacher,
Right.
build a reputation as somebody who can develop a choir. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It changed, and you're earning you're earning people's respect, and you're developing your skill. You're
Right.
fighting imposter syndrome. I feel like I'm still doing that in my anchor
Oh yeah.
stage,
When you're
right?
adequate. Yeah.
Yeah. overcommitted, underrooted, you know. So you're trying to do everything and you don't have a particular place, but you're fueled here by ambition and
Right.
insecurity,
Yeah,
right?
this is the stage, yeah, when I'm just grinding. I'm grinding. You got all these side hustles, you got the main job. And like you said, you grinding, you have ambition, but there is a sense of inadequacy. Am I good enough? Am I good enough? Should I be here? Yeah, and just working, working, working. Like I look at our kids now in their 20s, and I'm like, and I'm always telling you, like, ooh, that energy. Remember we had that
Yeah,
energy?
yeah, yeah.
Like they can play hard and work hard. And just, I need a few days. So it's just, I definitely remember that stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then I feel like we're still in this stage. It's called the clarifying stage.
Yes.
Asking what's really mine to do. I find myself doing that a lot lately,
Hmm.
through this season of my life, post COVID in particular.
Yes.
First Lady Gail was talking a minute. She said, "I felt like this was a chance to see what the next generation is made of. At some
Mm.
point, the helicopter has to land.
Oh, that's good.
You have to trust it's going to land on firm foundation. Yeah. So
Wow.
you do what you do.
Yeah.
You train up the kids. Thank you, First Lady. Amen. Um, and so right. In terms of handing it over, like what you said,
Hmm.
we were talking about earlier. But clarifying is what's really mine to do. Amen.
Right.
And I'm doing that right now as I'm thinking about ministry, and I'm
Hmm.
thinking about what to say no to and what to say yes to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like recently there was some things I was asked to do, but I know at my age now I can't do everything. Right. So
Right.
I'm pruning away distractions and misaligned roles. I cannot do everything.
Right.
So even in terms of youth ministry, I'm not the youth minister anymore. And so
Mm.
even with youth conference, I can't put it together. I used to be the youth leaders, the IYC chair, but that's not my role anymore.
Right.
So I can't get confused to ever think I could jump in into, I could, but then I would be misaligned.
Hmm.
It returns me to my core values of service,
Right.
my core values of faith, um, excellence. I'm trying to think of my different core values, right? This is a time to clarify what that means. And that's sometimes why people in marriages start to kind of, the marriage, the relationship starts to shift, because now you're coming to the age where you're understanding what your values are in a way you probably never did before.
Right.
You begin to say, this is what's important to me.
Right.
You'll say trust is important to me,
Hmm.
or freedom is important to me,
Hmm.
or wealth isn't. You begin to really, after living your life, come to terms with what matters to you, and so you begin to prioritize peace and purpose.
Right.
And that's where you say, I don't care what people think. This is what matters to me. So
Right.
we're still kind of in that stage, and we're fueled in this moment by discernment and depth.
Right.
Really depth, really growing, not having to be everywhere, not having to have every stage,
Right.
but beginning to say, okay, this is where I belong, and this is where I have my depth. You begin to subtract. You begin subtracting so your soul can breathe, right?
Mm.
So that's powerful.
And
And
I
then,
think can I and even with the clarifying stage, I think I realized with me, there were, like you said, questions I wanted to ask. What are my core values, and how is that relatable to the people that are in my life or the people that I surround myself with? I start asking questions like, what parts of being the anchor feels life giving, and what parts feel heavy? Because there is a tug of war as to some parts do feel heavy and some parts do feel like it gives me life, that it fuels me. What does stepping back without stepping away looks like? Because sometimes, when you're in the clarifying stage, you're in that burnout stage as well. And sometimes people are like, I'm done, I'm throwing it out the window. But I really personally had to step back and say, okay, I am stepping back, but I'm not stepping away. And what does that look like in this season as a minister of music, as a parent? What does that look like? And what would it mean for me to just redefine my role, as a daughter, as a mom, as a church member? What does that look like? And for me, what I've really been trying to focus on is, where is God calling me to anchor differently in this next season of my life? So those are some questions that I've been asking myself.
Okay. So you talked about, explain that again. You talked about discerning what feels heavy, or what feels. Explain what you mean by that. When you say
So
heavy, is that a negative heavy? Is it
weighty.
a
So what
weight?
feels weighty? So discerning what feels heavy, what parts are life-giving. So when the family is over and when we're all together, and when my sister is with my siblings call because the baby has a fever and they're not do, and I can give them advice and they're like, yeah, it worked, or I could, help them with their parenting questions, or sometimes just to be there to reaffirm them, because I remember I needed to be affirmed as a young parent. Those moments could be life-giving. Then you have parts that are weighty. I have elderly parents, and seeing who they are in this stage of their life compared to where they were when I was young, and having the responsibility of caretaking them, you kind of grieve, that part of your life. And that can be, it's an honor. I count it an honor to be able to be there for my parents, all of my parents, my in-laws, and my parents. But it can be weighty, because you see, you kind of grieve. You grieve that part of your life. So that part, it's not a negative connotation. It's just weighty. Make sense?
Yeah, I'm just sitting in. I'm kind of sitting in what you said. Yeah, I'm sitting in what you said, because I think that's part of the stage.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then, so that's the clarifying piece for you.
That's the clarifying piece for me. Yes.
Okay, okay.
It's a big piece.
Yeah, and that's, I was looking at, okay, and then I'm gonna do, we got a few more stages, and
Yeah.
then so because sometimes these stages are actually correlated to the ages we are in.
Mm.
So that, like, so I'll just say quickly, your building stage is kind of from your late teens to your early 30s. You're building, and you're striving, and so they overlap. So a lot of times you're doing building and striving at the same time.
Right.
You're hustling and you're building. You're building and you're hustling. So you strive from into your 20s and your 40s. So to some degree, in certain areas of our lives, we're still striving. When I think of ministry, sometimes I'm not satisfied. You know me. I feel like I always got the strive button. I'm not satisfied with where the church is. I don't know if I'll ever be, right? So I'll always be striving, but I also have to move into this moment where I have to be also kind of settled, right? So that looks different for me, but I'll talk about that later. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay.
So the clarifying stage is from 30 to 50.
Okay.
And then let me introduce the anchoring stage, which is from 40s to 60s, and then there's one more stage, right? So let's go back here. So you got clarifying, you have anchoring. And anchoring, let me make it big, because my eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Right? Anchoring is when we hold space. We're holding space and guarding sacred rhythms. Yes. We're moving into that stage now where we know what's important, right? Where we know rest is important. Or for Paulette, going on vacations a couple times a year is important, right? Yes. Becoming a steady presence for others. Like, it's no longer about what I'm building and what I'm doing. It's realizing that other people, and that's kind of what hit me this week, that other people rely on my presence in a different way. It's one thing, again, to be the hot young preacher. You preach, you get out of the way, you stir the crowd, but now in a very quiet way, whether it's being a pastor and a spiritual leader in an organization, whether it's being a father at the age of 49 when you have a 20 kids in their 20s. And so now they're moving into a different stage of life. They're moving into the striving stage, and they need your steady presence. Because I remember how it was for us when we were raising our kids and we were able to kind of lean on our parents, right?
Yes.
So now we're getting ready for that stage. So we're leading through rootedness, not reaction.
Right.
right?
Yeah.
We don't react to everything. I remember I used to go through some things, and my mother used to be like, "It's gonna be okay." She ain't do much. She didn't help me all of it, but she just was there
You
to
just
say, "It's
do it.
gonna be okay." I've been there before. It's gonna be okay. Don't worry if the kids are crying all night, or if you're at work and things are stressful at work and the boss is not treating you the way you think he should be. Like her experience kind of settled me. Okay, if mommy
Yes.
said this is going to be okay, then I trust that it's going to be okay, because I know that she's kind of lived a life where she's had to prove this for herself, right? And then you have Pat. So that goes on with this passing wisdom and not just information.
Right.
That was me this weekend, because I remember whenever I got a chance. So I didn't preach this weekend, but I did teach and do seminars, but I did it in a different way. And I remember in the past, I just felt like I had to give people all the information that I had. Like I had all this learning, and I just wanted to make sure people had the information that I learned. But this week, it wasn't about that. It was more about just, okay, this is the information that I have, but let's not just share information. Let's talk about what this stuff means and how to
Right.
make it impact our lives. And then, so this season is fueled by clarity, conviction, and presence. And so that's kind of the stage I find myself in and being very reflective of. And this happens in the mid 40s to late 40s into the 60s into about the mid 60s and so forth. Those of us that's in our Gen X,
Mm-hmm.
our parents are no longer the anchors. If they're around, they're not really the anchors anymore. That's us. They don't
Right.
have the, because anchoring takes energy, right? You're no longer the flame starter. You're the one keeping the fire lit.
Right.
So I'm no longer the person in church. And let me
Mm-hmm.
come on screen. I'm no longer the person in church who
Ooh.
has to be cutting edge anymore. Because
Right.
I'm Mr. Cutting. I'm the innovative guy. I no longer have to do the armed and dangerous conferences and be
Right.
out in the streets with the choir and army fatigues. That's
Right.
not me anymore. That's me encouraging other young people to, because matter of fact, even if I did that stuff, I can't really identify with this younger generation.
No.
So I got to support other young people. You like you got things you want to do. So let me do this the single screen so you could go to work. So it allows me to. So I'm in that space where I have to um, be the guy. And this has never been me, the guy to say, okay, well, this is what we teach, and let's try to be anchored to what we believe
Right.
communally, right? Like I got to get used to being that guy,
Mm-hmm.
as
Right.
opposed to being a guy that's pushing things toward the edge. And so that's the stage we're in here, as we can see, that anchoring stage. And then finally there's this other stage called eldering and witnessing,
Mm.
and it's becoming the living story. You don't actually have to talk. I think about like a Billy Graham before he passed away.
Right.
I think about I was part of this movement called CCDA,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember the elder's name, which is a shame. I want to say, if I was sitting where you are, I could just grab the book that's behind me. Um, but he was the founder of the CCDA movement, and every time he comes, he doesn't. No, not Hopkins. No, no, no,
Okay.
no. It was an elder black man. He was around the civil
Oh,
rights era.
I know you're talking
So
about.
so I'll come back, and but I'm not where I'm not in my secret place where I could
I think
grab
it's John
books.
Perkins. I think it's John.
John Perkins is the name. John Perkins is definitely the name.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember just being around these people who just their presence bore witness to what you can do. This is like Nelson Mandela before he passed away. He wasn't the
Right.
president anymore. He wasn't the freedom fighter anymore, but his presence was a living witness. And so
Right.
me and you are not there yet. We're far from there. We're
Far
in
from
the
it.
anchoring stage, right? But
Right.
but everybody needs to know kind of the stage you're supposed to be at. This is the mid 60s and beyond. You're becoming a living story. You're blessing and naming the next generation like Abraham did. You're mentoring without needing the spotlight. You're having quiet meetings with people. You're having deep consultations, deep consulting. So
Yes.
you're leading the leaders, right? You're talking to people like me. You're offering presence more than performance.
Right.
This is kind of my dad, like where my dad kind of is now at our
Yes.
church, just kind
Yes.
of being there.
His presence.
His
Papa.
yeah, Papa.
Yeah. I mean, and one thing I noticed and about the anchoring stage as well is you start to redefine your roles with intention. So like in ministry, I'm learning how to reclaim my yes. I don't
Mm-hmm.
I don't no longer have to prove myself to earn my belonging, to earn my acceptance, but I give because I want to, because I enjoy to.
Now, what are you talking about now? I
This
missed.
is redefining your roles with intention during the
Mm,
anchoring season, right?
okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, you reclaim your yes. Um, you reclaim your yes in ministry, in family, modeling a healthy, like for example, modeling a healthy delegation. So whereas many years ago, you invited everybody over and you cooked everything, now I'm at the stage now where, Ashley has to sit,
Wow.
you know,
Okay. I
can you
never even thought of it like that.
Ashley, can you make
Yeah.
you make the chicken divan now. You know the family recipe, so you bring it.
Right. Right.
And she makes a great one.
I'm not doing all the barbecuing anymore.
No, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with that.
Right.
And
Right.
actually, and so redefining that, because years ago, it doesn't mean anything was wrong with it, but that wasn't the way it was done. As a daughter-in-law, you came and you showed up and you offered, but you sit down and you wait to eat food. Whereas
You waited your turn.
you waited your turn. Whereas I'm different in terms of, I'm more of a collaborative person. And so I enjoy telling my sister-in-law to bring something and
Mm-hmm.
us celebrating her dish,
Yeah.
and then it actually gives us a more sense of family. So yeah, redefining even our roles, our roles in the family, and in ministry. So yeah, anchoring has a lot to do, I feel, find redefining your roles with intention. Yeah.
It's not that just you can collaborate, but you have the anchoring means you have the respect of the people
Yes.
around you to actually get them to do it, right? Because if you
Right.
had did it 20 years ago, they'd be like, "Who are you? What did mommy say?" You know what I mean? It would be
Exactly.
like
Or they
you
would
didn't
even,
get
you made that?
yeah, yeah. You weren't there yet, but now it's like the stage speaks for itself in terms of the
Yes.
fact that you can do it and people respond.
Right.
Like it's like what is before people do things, they're gonna ask Paulette, you think we should do so and so and so and so?
Right.
Like we talking about this coming weekend is Father's Day, that whole thing. All right, so so we're here in the anchoring piece, me and you. So
Right.
let's talk about it from different perspectives.
Okay.
Um, Anchoring, what it means for you to be, what does that anchoring energy look like in marriage?
What does the anchoring energy look like in marriage? It reflect it's emotional maturity.
Mm-hmm.
As you live with somebody and you journey with somebody, you get to learn more about them, and you get to learn more about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's a lot of, yeah, it definitely is emotional maturity, acceptance of who I am as a person, identifying who I am and accepting who I am and loving who I am, and also accepting and loving the person that you're with, and so I'm reading this book now called The Mastery of Love, and it talks about that, accepting people for who they are. Sometimes we try to change people, like, why you always wearing sneakers? You need to put on
Mm-hmm.
shoes. You're not a kid anymore. Put on shoes. That's
Right,
not
right,
accepting. That's changing somebody into who you think they should be.
right, right,
But
right,
accepting them is, she wears shoes, so that's her.
right,
And that's, yeah, that's my girl. She wears shoes. I mean, she wears
right,
sneakers. So,
right.
and so I'm even learning how to do that when somebody doesn't something does, and it's not just even with you, but intentionally. I don't I'm purposeful and not complaining about why they don't do this. I'm more accepting is, well, that's who they are, you know. And that takes practice. So yeah, so even with our marriage, yeah, definitely emotional maturity, acceptance, and showing up with grace.
Mm-hmm.
So for
What
example,
does that mean? Yeah.
so for perfect example today, so we came home
Today.
today, we couldn't find a remote. We couldn't find the remote.
Okay.
And it happens to me all the time. And you were like, I just had it. I just had it. And it was like in plain sight, hidden kind of under your iPad. And I noticed when you picked it up, you looked at me, I guess, to see what my response was going to be. And I didn't have a facial response. And I said to you, it happens to me all the time. And it
Right.
does. So, years ago, it would be like, he probably thought I moved it.
Right, 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 right.
Right there. But I purposefully like, because I know sometimes I don't have a facial expression, but it could be mistaken for a facial expression. So to make sure that wasn't happening, I made a point to say it happens to me all the time. And so that I wasn't, yeah. So those are things that I'm really learning. That's for me how it has
Okay.
shown
That's a
marriage.
good example. That's a good example. All
Mhm.
right. Yeah, that just happened today. Okay.
What about you?
Well, acceptance is a big thing for me. I remember we were talking just this year. Me and you've been talking a lot just this year,
Hmm.
and just kind of there is a ideal that you have about the person you're going to be with. Sometimes you don't even me and you talked about how you get married to the person you think the person is, as
Right.
opposed to allowing the person to really be the person they are. So
Right.
you had a particular personality in church that everybody thought you were, and even me.
Right.
And what I've come to realize is you're not. That's the church presenting Paulette. Not even church presenting Paulette. That's
That's
the in service presenting Paulette.
right. Trying to be accepted
Well,
and
let me finish. Let me finish.
okay.
Um, so, but just understanding that you have to let I think for it being in our context a lot. This is the thing, being in our context, because we've gotten it a lot this year in particular. Being
Hmm.
in our context a lot, it's always about presenting an image that's acceptable to people. And one of the things in our environment is that you have to kind of be conservative, be
Perfect.
no, that's not it.
You don't think so?
No, no, no. You have to be conservative.
Hmm.
You have to kind of conform to particular images.
Yes.
And that's not you. That's not you. You're gonna push the envelope.
Well, I
You're
don't do it
gonna
on purpose.
you're gonna be. Can you let me finish?
I'm sorry. This is good.
Jesus.
All right.
Amen.
I talked about. I'm sorry. It was in my report cards. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. That that you're gonna push the envelope. There's always gonna be a party with Paulette. Uh, and sometimes for me that's been scary because I know you're not gonna have to be the one to deal with it or live with it. It's usually me, the husband, like, but just coming to grips with the fact that the only way to really enjoy as we get older and move forward, enjoy one another is just allowing Paulette to be Paulette, and then Paulette allowing Johnny to be Johnny. And it's not just allowing that, it's because that's almost like saying, okay,
You
tolerating.
give
But no,
permission.
actually, no, not even giving permission. Because I don't have to give you, you're a grown woman. I'm not gonna
Well,
give
what
you
I'm saying
permission.
is saying allowing sounds like you're giving permission, using that word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's the word you use though. That's why I was just mirroring your word. But what I'm saying is actually enjoying the person. That this is who that person is. And you could fight it, number one, which I don't think necessarily you've ever done. You can be afraid of it. And it's not just me. I'm not the only one that has that kind of Paulette response. Your folks do it too. Your sister does it. Like
Oh,
everybody. No, I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say the whole church. I disagree. I disagree. I disagree
okay.
with that. I think there are a lot of people in the church that, particularly as we move forward, actually, what I've noticed lately is people appreciate it.
Really?
Yeah, because it's that vibe that the service could be going on, and then Paulette will show up, and we know it's about to be on, and we know post COVID, that's what we need. We need a Paulette moment. We need Paulette to be Paulette and to lift the service to a different place, and you do that in your way, right? I'm not the service lifter up. I'm the one who gives resonance to the service. So we do two different things, right? So no, I'm not. It's the problem is for you is you always think it's the larger community. It's not the larger community. It's the people the people closest to you, and you feel like everybody echoes that. But your problem has never been the larger audience. Your problem has always been with your husband, your sister, your parents,
And friend yeah.
not even your closest friends. No,
Well, no, not my closest friends. No.
no. It's not even and maybe people close to you. Like I
Who
know
I
you're
work
thinking
with.
about.
People I
Yeah,
work with. Right.
yeah, yeah. Right. So But when you allow somebody, when you acceptance gives you the space
Yeah, it does.
to enjoy the person for who they are, and I think that's what has helped us. So anchored marriages are less about fireworks, more about fireplaces. You know,
Right.
yeah. So we've passed that stage as well, right?
Yeah.
But fireworks is like arguing, I guess, and fighting, and even the passionate part too. But
Mm-hmm.
now we have more of a slow burning passion, more of
Right.
I would say a fireplace, right? The next thing to talk about, unless you have more to say, because
No, I'm good.
you sure? Okay.
Sure.
Um, anchor anchor energy in ministry and church life. I'm gonna let you talk about that first. What does it look like for you today?
Anchor energy and ministry in church life. Younger leaders are building and striving, right?
We're talking about for you personally.
Oh, for me,
Yeah,
for me, anchor
because we.
ministry. Mhm.
Uh,
Go ahead, say what you're gonna say.
so I'll say because I'll give you time to think. Then,
Right,
yeah, because what you're trying to say is that younger leaders, that when we were younger, we were building and striving, and we
right,
definitely remember that. I remember, like I said, we've been me and you, our ministry, our marriage, for the good and bad. It's good to that and bad to that. Um, has been defined by ministry. So
yeah,
um, we were young, we were building and striving. We were trying to build a church. At one point, we actually wanted to launch our own church, but for the most part, we spent our youth building our parents' ministries. Me
yeah,
building my dad's, you building your dad's, and you come and help me build my dad's and stuff like that. We spent a lot of our time
building,
not building for ourselves
building.
necessarily, but building for others. But we did it. Um, and hopefully you see that with young people today. I don't see as much of it as I used to. But
Mhm.
now in this space, it's and I feel that I made it somewhat of a transition. That I because I remember even a few like a last year, I was like, should I still try to build a church? Because that's always been in my heart.
Right,
But I do feel that that time has passed for me, and what the church needs from me is not another church. What the church needs from me is for me to begin to build, to work on reinforcing the infrastructure.
right.
So that's where this new paradigm for me called
Me.
grace conversation has come into play, because we don't need strong buildings anymore. I need to see now if some of my young ministers want to go out and do that, I'm here to support them. That's
Right,
what it means to anchor.
right,
Um, but I'm here to build up them, build up young leaders,
right,
build disciples.
right.
That's where I am now. And that's where Grace Conversations has really come into the fore in terms of understanding, and helping other people, helping someone like, coaching other pastors.
Right.
Um, I'm looking forward to my conversations with the young lady who got was was anointed, the anointing ceremony for youth minister. I'm really becoming excited about that, helping to coach the young man who leads IYC, right? Because it's not that when they because see out the instinct or the temptation is that when they falter, we jump in and take over, and that's
Right,
really not what we need to do in the anchor stage.
right,
In the
exactly.
anchor stage, we need to say, no, you stay right there.
Uh-huh.
I was striving. I was building. I made mistakes.
And it's
I fell
okay.
on my face and got back up.
You gonna
Stay
be
there. I got you. I
right,
got you.
right.
And let me help you to see where you've gone wrong, and let me coach you forward. So I'm actually excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
Excited about helping see other leaders grow. As I'm that steady presence that no matter where they're going, they could come back and look for me and find me. They need to be able to look and know where I am. That's the same thing with our kids, right?
Availability.
That's the same way. I remember when we were growing up, you know where home was, right? Even
Yeah.
till today, for you in particular, you know the address of home. You could
When in
always show
doubt,
up at home. You could
go to
always go home.
295.
That's what it. I didn't want to give people your address, woman.
It could be
Amen.
anywhere in the world.
Yeah, but but the anchor, being able to hold the space for people, for them to know where they can go. Um,
Let-
so it's for me, it's less preaching,
Mm,
it's more teaching, it's less consulting and training, more coaching. It's coaching people who are equipped and can do the thing, right?
Right.
Can do it. That's why they're there. They got the calling and the gifting. I'm not
Right.
there to give answers, but like Jesus, to ask the kind of the right questions that help people go move into the right direction. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm enjoying this. And like you said, and yeah, for our marriage and for our life, it was defined by ministry. But I think that also informs how we anchor to other people. For example, like, we really never me and the kids were joking about it the other day, how when TJ was born, I was like, I'm staying home for 6 weeks, but I was in church at 4. And Abby was like, yeah, daddy, but daddy wasn't having that. We were in church at 4 weeks old. And then so we were always on. And so by that lived experience, I've learned to, even as I to be gracious to young families, to young mothers,
That's true.
affirming them,
That's
as they're
true.
fighting with their little kids in church. It's okay. It's
That's
okay.
true. That's
Worship
true.
them. Let
That's
him
really good.
worship,
Yeah.
or when Sister Paulette, we just gonna take a vacation. We're gonna be out this Sunday. Good. Spend time with your family. Enjoy it. I'm not mad. I'm not bitter because you're not gonna be. We'll figure it out. But I
Right. Right.
encourage, that time away to rejuvenate based on my learned experience. So I
Right.
think, yeah, being that steady in the being that anchor, I feel it's really influenced by our learned lived experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're more gracious to me. I don't say good, but I say I understand. I understand. because what happens is this is the challenge. So you're looking at it from the perspective of a mother and a wife and what you wanted from me back in, even in those days. I'm looking at it from, and I think most male pastors would say this as well. Your experience. You know what it takes to build something. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of
Right.
sacrifice.
Right.
At the same time, you do realize that there does need to be, and this is where the space is for community.
Mm-hmm.
That we didn't get those kind of grace, and it does take a toll on your relationship.
Yes.
To be honest, it takes a toll because you don't have those spaces where it's just ministry.
Not just the couple, but the family as a unit. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not as I'm not as gung ho as you. You encourage it, which I think is important. I'm very accepting of it. I'm very understanding that
Mm-hmm.
it is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
What I would tell young couples though is that when you building your rhythms for how you're gonna live your life in terms of this is what I would tell young couples as that when they pick up on their rhythms and they know when they're gonna be away, that they should, just like with their job, they don't just walk away from the job. The job knows a couple of weeks in advance.
Right.
So if you have weighty responsibility in ministry,
Yes.
you have to treat the ministry just like you treat your job and vocation. We'll move on to that next, but give the ministry, set up your ministry in such a way. If I go away, the ministry is okay because I'm going to let people know ahead of time.
Right.
And I got some really good leaders
Mm-hmm.
that can step in and take my place.
Right.
So you have to be responsible. There's a responsible way to do it.
Right.
That's what somebody in the anchoring stage would say.
Right.
When you're doing it right. So you're not going to say, don't go away, don't have fun, right, which is what we were told, kind of.
Yeah.
Don't go away, don't have no fun. It's all about ministry all the time. They didn't anchor well. Sometimes they didn't anchor well, and we're learning from them. So the anchor well is to say, okay, you do need space to reset and rewind and have fun and be, have these spaces where you go away with your loved one. But remember to do it with responsibility and care. It's not just about you and your family. Right. It's about the things that the community that you leave behind. Always leave them well, as you do it. Okay, let's keep going because we almost running out of time.
We got time. We got more time.
We do. I know. I'm not talking about that. I'm just looking at how much time we're taking already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I didn't
realize. Yeah. Okay. Last area. What about we put academia and vocation because we love being in school, but particularly for you vocationally? I guess we both can speak of it vocationally, but
Mm-hmm.
for you vocationally, what does it look like? What does it mean to be an anchor in spaces that value novelty, that value hustle, that value the grind? We all talking about the grind, but what does it look like to be the anchor person vocationally?
Well, actually, because this is a new career, I don't feel I'm in the anchoring stage.
Mm,
I'm actually in the striving
you're
stage.
in the strive. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I was mentored by an amazing mentor this school year. And so this is, my first year as
That's
teaching.
powerful.
Yeah, I was in school. So I was learning to be a teacher. So
Mhm.
I'm going into this next year with no school, without my mentor. I mean,
Mhm.
she'll be in arm's reach, but so now it's like, wow, okay, what do I do?
Right.
Do I do adult education? Do I do after school? What do I do? you know? And so I'm striving. I'm like picking up the extra classes to make the extra money. I'm deciding, do I want to do after school? Do I want to do summer school? They told, so I'm in that striving stage where I'm just grabbing at everything to see what sticks.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer for that because I'm in the striving stage when it
Okay.
comes to my vocation.
But you can look at it from the point of view where this mentor seems to be kind of one of the
Oh,
people who helps to anchor you.
definitely,
So you
definitely.
you understand what it means to have an anchor as opposed to be
Yes,
the anchor, but
yes.
because you're striving. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So wow, that's powerful.
Mhm,
So I would say this, even for me, so vocationally in church, I'm definitely moving into the anchor stage,
mhm,
right? I'm still striving to some degree because I'm still not happy with, like, um if I was to step aside today, I wouldn't be happy where the church is. And
mhm.
not just in my local church, but just where the church is
Wow.
in my region, in my district, globally. I feel like I have some more to contribute
Mhm,
as a striver, but I'm also moving into the anchor, particularly when it comes to dealing with younger ministers and stuff like that. Now,
mhm,
with all that said, I'm also striving in terms of, because I'm widening who I am. So I'm striving. I want to. There's some things I still want to do. So you're right. We're never just in one stage, even though we're kind of in the middle of our lives. I'm
mhm,
striving to be a new coach, striving and building a coaching
mhm,
practice, striving and building frameworks for different things I want to do. I want to do some writing and stuff like that. And so there are areas in which hopefully in the next 5 years I'll have a book or two out. So y'all pray for me. I'm working on those things. I have some really great ideas that I want to really. So this anchor stage is one thing about the anchor, but the anchor stage is not a stage that we don't necessarily build. It's what we're building. So
right.
like in the anchor stage, we're not necessarily building things that you can see, but we're building infrastructure. So when I talk about the books is me striving in one way as an author, but it's
Mhm,
also me. I think in this stage of my life, the book is different than it would have been 20 years ago. This
mm.
book is about the legacy I'm trying to leave behind, the different ideas. I'm thinking
Mhm,
differently. I'm thinking about what kind of insight to give up and coming preachers, how to
mm.
preach diasporically, how to preach in ways in which you're thinking about your community, right? Like as
Right.
a Black preacher, I have to think differently
Yes.
than a classic evangelical preacher. He
Mhm,
has a different community, and I have to think diasporically because I'm Afro Latino, Afro
right.
Caribbean, I'm Afro American, I'm Afro all the things, right?
Mhm,
And so how to speak to that. So I have the way my mind works. I have all these critical ideas, how to preach apocalyptically in a responsible
mm.
way. Yeah, I got a whole bunch of crazy things going on in my head. Building frameworks for ministry, building frameworks for retreats and spiritual growth. So I'm striving, but the content is still of the anchoring nature. And I think
Mm.
that might be the same way for you in
Yes.
what you're doing. You're thinking differently. When you're thinking about teaching, you're not just thinking about getting your career and your money up. You're thinking about helping families,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So that's
Right.
anchoring language.
And that's true. I'm sorry to interrupt, but before I lose my thought, that is true. Like, so as the teacher of adult children, I'm dealing with first time parents, and so they're looking to me as what should I do? You know, and so and I remember one of my coworkers, she told me when she first started teaching, she came out of school, she was like 20, in her early 20s. And she said these young parents were looking at her like she was the expert, and she was only 22 and she didn't have no kids.
Right.
But as a teacher, you're the expert. So you're absolutely right. I am that anchor for a lot of my parents. It's
Mhm.
okay. They're brilliant, you know, and reaffirming them and coaching them as to how to parent their children, and as a teacher and as a staff. You know, I have a whole staff that, you know, that I'm mama bear to. And so, you
Mhm.
know, they're younger, and so I do present an anchor for them too. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny how we can overlap. You can be
It
anchoring
overlaps. It
in the
overlaps.
space.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about the stage I am, particularly in ministry. I think part of the anchoring piece is how you value people. So I
Mm,
think at a different stage, it was about me, and it's about what I'm doing. And so even as coming in as pastor, establishing myself as pastor,
mhm.
kind of worrying about who's trying, you're worrying about who's trying to come after you, who's trying to take your space. These are things you consider when you're younger. You're not thinking about who's there, you're thinking about who's not there. You're thinking about the empty seats and bringing people in. And I find that in the stage I'm moving into now, it's less about that. I'm not worried about who wants to take it. I'm like, if you want to take it, here, come, you can have it. Like, like I know I have enough confidence in myself now that I know anywhere I go, I have value.
Right.
Right. As
Yes.
opposed to that when I was young,
That's valuable.
I felt like that's all I had. But I realized no, so it comes with a level of maturity that's very
Yeah.
that I'm only coming into now. And so we could come back to these conversations over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I value the people in a different way.
Mm.
Like I'm really, really at this point in my life, really, really we've begun changing the way we do things at our church because of my deep need to see the people that I have grow, as
Right.
opposed to having the people that I
Um,
have come to church. It's one thing to have them come to church and be in attendance. It's another thing to want to make sure that they are that they are growing in grace in the right way, and just the responsibility that you feel about them,
right.
about your peers.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's less about competition, less about
Right.
resentments, at least for me, and
Mm-hmm.
really more about really deep care.
Yeah.
And so this is the funny word that keeps coming into my spirit, is fatherhood.
Mm.
This stage for me, and not patriarchy, that's different, that comes,
Yeah.
or patriarchal, that comes later. That's the later stage, like 2 stages from now.
Mm-hmm.
But this stage is about being the father to people spiritually, being a spiritual father, even to be a spiritual father to people that are older than you. We just sent a young woman, uh, who is older than me. She was my associate pastor, and now she's pastoring the church. Now she's older than me and has a lot of experience than me in a lot of different ways. But in this particular area, pastoring, I have much more experience. And so, in that sense, I'm a spiritual father. It's like, feels weird saying it. It feels weird saying it. It
Embrace.
does.
Embrace it.
I'm embracing it, but it feels weird to say
It
it.
does.
It
It
does
does.
feel weird to say it, but that's where I am. And so that's what it means to anchor. And so I'm owning it. I hope this is really blessing somebody. Before we close, who are some anchors in your life, Paulette? Who are the anchors in your life that you look to
Who
now?
who are some anchors in my life that I look to now? Oh, definitely my youth leader. She was one of my, yeah.
Okay, she's still an anchor for you.
She's still an anchor for me. So you know, if I pick up the phone now, 2 hours will pass, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
she still affirms me. We reminisce. She's definitely an anchor for me. My mentor at work. She's been an anchor for me. And I have mothers in the church who, you know, aside from my mom is definitely been an anchor for me because I'm going through, I'm going through the stages she went through 20 years ago, having adult children. I remember one time my dad told me, you never stop being a parent. You never stop worrying. It's just a different kind of worry.
Right,
you
right.
know, you worry about them falling, walking and falling. Then you worry about the friends that they have. Then you worry about them getting into a car accident because they're driving. That's,
Yeah, yeah.
and so my parents have been anchors in terms of even with parenting. But I do have mothers in the church too who yeah, I have many anchors that I'm so grateful for. Yeah, you're my anchor.
Oh, wow.
You're one of the main anchors in my life, because I could be all over the place, but you
Hmm.
you keep me steady. I've learned resilience from you. I've learned consistency from you. Um, no matter how it's going, consistency and resilience, and keep forging through. And so sometimes when I can be overwhelmed, you are that anchor that settles me and reminds me of who I am, who the woman that I am today, the woman that I'm becoming. You, even now, present day, you remind me of who I am. When things can be overwhelming, when the nuance of everything, all the new stuff can be overwhelming, you remind me of who I am. So you're a huge anchor in my life. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Man. You
What
stole.
about you?
Well, for me, I'll say vocationally in terms of ministry, definitely, I would say the pastor next door, Pastor Trufant, has been a big anchor for me. Dr. Robertson, he's my theological anchor. When I start drifting into other thought ideas, I always give him a call because He's gonna keep me covered. Um, Dr. Austin Lucas is a mother for me.
Mhm.
So that's in terms of vocation, kind of academic, ecclesial. But even in the local church, definitely, I would say, I was away this weekend at the conference. I thought about Pastor Ron or Brother Ron.
Mm.
Um, of course, my dad, in a weird way. That's a weird relationship. Um, yeah, because sometimes I feel like I anchor him.
Yes. I
It's
was thinking
funny.
that.
It's funny.
I know you
Yeah,
are his
that's a whole conversation. Yeah, I allow him to be free spirited.
right. You do. Yeah.
So that's a weird relation because my dad is 30 years older than me, but
So then the question is, if you're his anchor, who's your anchor for you? Right. And you named
yeah,
it.
I'm naming them. Um, that's a really good question. I feel like I do have some peer anchors, like you said. So like a Josh and a Marlon, they help to anchor me. Those peer pastors and stuff like that, who are
Mhm.
my peers. Um, yeah. I have some big sisters who I would say are big anchors for
Yeah.
me, like a Daphne or somebody like that.
Hmm.
Don't tell her I said that. Um,
Shout out to that.
yeah, yeah. And then, like you said it about me,
You
but
didn't have
no, 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 but no. What I was gonna say is I've never heard you say that to me. I've
okay.
always said it about you. I've always told
Mm-hmm.
you that for me,
Mm-hmm.
because the way I am someone who drifts, um, emotionally, drifts intellectually. I like to explore. Um, you and the kids uh, are that steady space that allows me to have a place to come settle back home. So we're anchors for each other in different ways. Um, but you keep me honest. I would say that. So yeah. So that's powerful. I think this is an awesome episode,
Yeah.
and it was some stuff we could continue to talk about as the time
And
goes by.
and I want to
Um,
encourage people. I want to ask you, who are your anchors?
right.
Write down those names. And as you write them down, tell them thank you, appreciate it.
Mm.
Thank God for having those anchors in
Send
your
a
life.
text, right? Just send a
And just send a
text.
text and saying
Thank you
thank
for
you
being an
for being
anchor
my
in my life.
anchor.
Yeah.
Look, when we get off, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that myself.
Oh wow. Oh
I'm gonna
wow.
send it to a few people to let them know. Gail,
Mm.
thank you for being my anchor. She's one of my other anchors. So, but I'm am I thinking right? Girl, you fine.
Mm.
That's we have, yeah. So
Yeah.
send that text. Think about it. Write it in your notes. So anytime you do need to refer to that list, you have a list to go to. You have a list to remind you of who got what anchors that are in your life. Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
Gratitude.
Yeah. All right. So we closing. So glad that you were with us today. Remember this: we're not done dreaming. Just because we're in a different stage, we're not done dreaming.
Right.
It's just that the dream is different. We're no longer dreaming the way we used to.
Right.
The dream now is to become a space where others can rest, grow, and rise. And that's what it means to be the anchor. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what you're facing, somebody is counting on you. So keep bouncing back. Until next week.
Till next week, we'll be here.
See you later. Bye. Let me get that outgoing music. All right.